Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Non-Toxic Environment Show. This is your host, Andy Pace. I'm so happy to be back with you all for a new season of the show. I've been at this is my eighth, ninth season, going on, I think, 6 or 7 years now. Boy, it's hard to keep track. But we've done several hundred episodes now of the show, starting with podcasting only to now here on YouTube. And, after all these episodes and all the topics we've done, at the beginning of every season, I always say, I'm so excited for this season. Honestly, we've done topics ranging from chemical sensitivities and mold sensitivities to HVAC systems and cabinetry and closet systems, flooring materials, you name it. This is going to be another wonderful season of the show. We're going to be bringing in a whole host of experts in a variety of topics. And today, to start things off, I'm bringing in a good friend of mine, Eric Goranson. Eric has been the host of a podcast and even a local regional television show on fixing the fix-up shows. The show name is Around the House Show. And I've been on Eric's show a few times now over the years. And what I love about talking with Eric is, of course, we start talking about healthy home materials and methods and whatnot. And it usually sort of turns into just a couple of good friends chatting about things. And we might talk about whiskey once in a while too. So I don't know if we'll get there this episode, but I'm really excited to have Eric on the show today to talk about the traditional construction mentality when it comes to embracing healthy home attributes. Eric is right there in the trenches, I would say, working with contractors, working with homeowners. He does a lot of research into the newest and most innovative building materials, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I really want to get his perspective on what it's like for the industry when you, the homeowner or the renter, will go to the contractor or to the landlord to say, can we do things differently for my house because of my health issues? And I mean, I know kind of what they want to say, but I want to hear from Eric. How is it really taken? How is it perceived? And does he see a change in their attitudes and in their perspectives? So that's what we're going to talk about for the most part today. We're going to talk about some new innovative materials in the industry. And so, again, welcome back to the show. Please enjoy. Welcome to the show, Eric, my friend. How are you today?
Thanks, brother. It is great. It's wintertime right now, having a good time and getting ready for the Builder Show coming up, and a lot of good things going on this year.
Oh, the Builder Show. I love going there. It is a lot of walking, a lot of standing. The last time I was there, I actually had to buy a new pair of shoes midweek because I wore a pair out. I mean, it's just a lot of work.
It's like training for a 10K or something, even though I've never done that. It's literally, the first day I was there 2 years ago, I was filming for my TV show, and I was dragging the cameraman around, and we did 13 interviews and walked 14 miles on the first day. So, and that was trying to plan it. So yeah, it's a marathon there, and you got to pace yourself.
You do. And no matter how much time you spend there, you never actually get to see everything you want to. And so, as we were talking a little bit about off camera, you have to plan things out. So, you plan your whole day out. Here's what I'm going to see if I can get somebody else in there in between. That's fantastic. And I'm sure this year it's even more so because every year the show gets bigger and better.
It does. And the hard part is the big flashy booths that drag you in. And pick any name of the big names that you walk into a home improvement store and you see on the shelf in the plumbing aisle or anywhere else. Those are cool to see what's going on. But really, many times the innovation is that little small 10 by 20 booth that's in a corner someplace that you want to walk right past. So it's tough.
Years ago, I remember when the U.S. Green Building Council had their first Green Build show. The first show they ever did was in, I think, Pittsburgh, but the first official national conference and show was in Portland. And I was there, and it was in a hotel conference center small little show. You walked around and you talked to all these little mom and pop stores and companies that invented something really cool, real eco-friendly or healthy. And it was just the vibe of the show was something else. And
Yeah.
compare that to like the AIA show or the CSI show, where it was all very corporate and here's how you do things, and here's our catalog, a rep will come visit you, and kind of boring. Eventually, the Greenbuild show kind of morphed into like the big builder AIA show,
Yeah.
and it got that vibe sort of went away. Last year at the builder show, the IBS show, I mean, it felt like that. I mean, you had the big corporations there, but all those little innovative companies were in their 10 by 8 booths that they probably spent
Mhm.
$5,000 on. It's the entire year's worth of profit, but they had to be there to show their wares. And yeah, definitely, those are the companies I love to talk to.
That's why I like the National Hardware Show, because they go off to the side and create their own zone for those small people. So you can go in there, hit them up. You walk in there, and I think it's their Inventor Innovation Zone or whatever they call it. And you walk in there, and it's literally tabletops like your little tiny home show. And it's guys in there, just male, female, whoever's in there pitching their brand new thing that's just either coming to market or going to market. Super fun to see.
Oh, I love
And
it.
you got to be a little careful though, because being media that I am, they all want media. So I feel like I'm walking into an Amway convention and I've never seen one before. So I got to be careful.
Well, you gotta put a hat on, a pair of glasses,
Yeah,
kind of disguise yourself.
I took my media badge off before I walked in because that was the first sign. It's like, oh, that's going to my pocket. I'm just going to kind of quietly walk around here. So
Right.
that
Instead
makes
of
it a
having
little
the S for
easier.
sucker on your forehead, you had an M for
Exactly.
media.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like scarlet letter walking in that place. You got to be careful.
Right. Well, the
Gotta
cool
be
thing
careful.
about being media, though, is that you do get sort of some backroom access to some of these manufacturers. And I know for the last several years now, you've been doing a lot of work with companies in, I don't want to say launching their products, but kind of putting your name behind their materials and their systems. And it's something that I truly trust, because I know if Eric has looked at this, he hasn't just read the brochure. I mean, you're looking at it from every angle, and making sure that it's something you want to put your name on. So let me
Yeah.
ask you, I know IBS is coming up, so you don't know right now, but in the last few months or last year, what are some things that came out that you thought have just been a phenomenal improvement to the industry?
Man, there are so many things out there. And there are so many things out there that they've sent me stuff. And they're like, hey, you going to feature? And I went, no, do you want it back? Because it
Yeah.
just doesn't work, or it doesn't work as advertised, or it works for a couple weeks and then it doesn't. You
Yeah.
know, I've got stuff that I've been waiting 4 months to get fixed because
Mm.
it broke before I could even show it on my TV
Wow.
show. And I'm like, all right, and it's taken your customer service 3.5, almost 4 months to fix it.
Yikes.
Not coming on my show. Not no seal of approval there. But one
Right.
of the things that I really like right now, and it's actually not even really home materials, but some of the stuff for cleaning inside the home. There
Mm.
is a new robot vacuum that I fell in love with, made by Roborock, and they're
Mm.
out of China. These guys are doing it right. They have got a robot that scrubs, cleans, dries, and it vacuums, and it knows what's a rug and what's a floor. Goes back to its base. It actually has a vacuum cleaner bag in it, like with its own HEPA bag in it, and it cleans it so you're not trying to dump stuff out and making more of a mess in your home.
Wow.
And I got two big dogs. That thing has saved hours a week at my house just cleaning. And at CES a few weeks ago, they have a new one that has a robotic arm that'll pick up a dog toy or a sock or a kid's toy, and it knows where to put it. It'll go drop it in a bin that's at floor level and put it away and get it out of the floor so it can clean.
Unbelievable. So you don't even need kids to do their job.
No,
Pick up your
no,
toys. Now the robot guy will get that for us.
man. If I'd had that as a kid, I'd had a lot more playtime instead of being, you can't go outside until your room's clean.
Right. Exactly. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Any of those types of items, I think that can make life a little less challenging. And, as you know, I work with a lot of folks who have chemical sensitivities and mold sensitivities and all sorts of health issues that, causes a depressed immune system. And one of the challenges that most of them face is just lack of energy. The fact that they run out of that energy very quickly, and so things like that could make life a little bit better. That quality of life. You maybe have to acquiesce a little bit on the fact that you're now buying a electric something or other, or something that might be considered, and I don't know, from an EMF standpoint,
Sure.
if anybody would have any issue with that. But, I look at the big picture, like quality of life, and that improves quality of life. This is definitely something we need to look into.
And I saw my PM 2.5 cut by about half after I did it.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool too. So,
That's
you know,
fantastic.
because, dogs, two big dogs, and the dirt they drag in,
Yeah.
the pet hair, the skin from all of us, it just adds up. And if I can run that like in the morning and the afternoon, and it uses AI to map out where everything is, so it kind of just knows how it works. And you don't have to get out of bed. You can literally grab your phone, hit go, and it goes.
Fabulous.
So
It,
something fun.
we always say that one of the best things you can do quickest to make your house healthier is to take your shoes off when you come in the house or before you walk around. But you can't really ask your pets to do that. So,
Right?
this is a great idea. I really appreciate that tip. That's great. Now,
It's just a cleaner home is just a cleaner home, no matter how you look at it. And you can use their cleaner. You can do it with just water. You could use your own. It's got its own little cleaner thing that you can pour into it. So
mm,
you can really control what's going down on your floor. You don't have to use some proprietary thing. So if you just wanted to have some just gentle, natural soap, you could go with that.
that's fantastic. So this kind of leads me to, I guess, the question of healthy homes. And now, I've known you for many years, and we've talked about healthy materials on your show, and I know how passionate you are about it. But I also know that you are really entrenched in all aspects of home fix-ups and remodeling and building and the entire industry. And I don't I when I see Eric in front of me, I'm not thinking he's a healthy home, because you have to encompass all of these ideas when you're
Yeah.
talking to people. And so, the question I'm thinking of is, as a representative of the traditional building industry who understands and really appreciates the healthy home aspects, how have you seen the industry adapt to this over the last maybe 3 to 5 to 10 years? And I'll preface that by saying, when I got started in this 33 years ago, and I started talking about healthy home materials, I mean, I was looked at like I had two heads, and
Hmm.
nobody wanted to talk about it. This was really like, this, what they say, the red herring. Nobody wanted to deal with it, because as soon as you talked about it, you admitted to the fact that you probably don't know about it, or what you've done probably isn't healthy. And I've seen it change, but I'm so close to it that it's hard for me to see for sure. So, what have you seen in the industry as it relates to adapting and adopting these healthy home attributes?
It's funny. The industry is getting better with it. But I will say, from the building community side, it seems a majority, and there's some great builders out there that are grabbing this and running with it, or doing a great job. But I would still say a majority of them, you're dragging them kicking and screaming, because it makes their job somewhat more difficult to do it right.
Yeah.
And third, if it wasn't for clients and the ever changing building codes and best practices out there, I'm not sure we'd be even as far as we are today, with a long, long, long way to go still on that road.
Yeah. And so I had a meeting this morning with a real high end a custom home builder. He does just absolutely wonderful work, and he's really excited about bringing in healthy home attributes to a project he's working on, and he's hoping this may help to sort of change what he is doing for all of his projects.
Love it.
But the discussion, turns into, um, but can we do it at the level of excellence that we are used to? And this has been the challenge that I see, and I'm sure you do too. And if you look at something like cabinetry, for instance,
Yeah.
custom cabinet makers, they have very specific finishes that they work with. It has to meet, the standards for stacking and touching and shipping and this and that and
Mhm.
durability and, chemical resistance. And when I tell clients, well, understand that the traditional finishes that are used by really high-end cabinet makers aren't very safe. They'll, oh yeah, sure. My guy says he can use healthier materials. Well, when it gets down to it, they won't and they can't because, the healthier materials take a little longer to cure. It's a different handling situation. So then it becomes this kind of hands in the air from the client, like, well, they said they could do healthy for me, but now they're saying they can't or they won't. For many years, Eric, that bothered me because I thought,
Yeah.
who in their right mind would look at a healthy material and say, I'm not going to use it? If everything else is the same price and so forth is the same, why wouldn't I use it? But now I understand it's the fear level of the contractors or the suppliers that say, I'm not sure what this is going to do, how it's going to screw up my production. I may have to completely refinish these before we ship them out, and I'm lost all profit in the job.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to change how I approach these situations. Like sometimes you have to take a step backwards to take two steps forwards. Sometimes you can only do as much as you can do. Do you see this maybe starting to soften a little bit and folks are maybe looking at opening up their eyes a bit and adopting new technologies?
Yeah, I got a big soapbox on this one because, 30 years in cabinetry, I have seen it kind of all from where we started and where we are today. And, you know, the first thing I say with people that are looking at cabinetry is they go, oh, I'm going to have custom cabinetry made. I'll be honest, most of the problems that I see that I deal with people going, how do I fix this? Are from air quotes, custom cabinet manufacturers because custom in the world of cabinetry means nothing. It just means not a major manufacturer that's building something, custom for your place. So the problem is there's a lot of guys out there that are building custom cabinets in their single car garage and using whatever finish they can get from their local home center and calling them custom, which creates issues. But if we go back in the Wayback Time Machine here, about 15 years ago, I think is where the cabinet industry kind of hit a little bump in the road because they went, hey, we're going to go with some greener materials. And I dealt with one that was just an absolute horrendous product. It was like a straw chaff particle board. I don't know if you
Mm.
saw that out in cabinetry.
Yep, I saw it.
And the,
I remember it.
and the problem was you couldn't ship it to the job site without replacing cabinetry. If you bumped it, it chipped off like it was a race cake.
Ugh.
I mean, you couldn't do it. And I went out to a project where a builder was trying to build a green project. And this manufacturer sent out this stuff out and he goes, I haven't even moved people in. And doors, hinges are breaking off the cabinets just sitting here and dropping down. And I looked at it and he basically had to reorder a completely different $60,000 cabinet package. Now that was 15 years ago, $60,000 to put in this custom house he was building up in the mountains because it wasn't going to work. So this was right when FSC certified stuff was coming out and NOF plywood and that kind of stuff. So we went with that. And it actually was cheaper than what that material was over there to do it with. And they had a cabinet package that was going to last them for decades if they took care of it. Right. The problem is that green stuff, I don't know what the warranty claims were on it, but a lot of companies did that stuff for about a year and then went, oh my gosh, I had to replace all these kitchens and bailed on it.
Yeah.
And that was a problem. Now, though, I'm seeing water-based baked on finishes from the larger manufacturers that are really cured a lot before they go out. So they use like a UV curing water-based system. So when it comes in, they spray it with their computers so there's not too much. It's in a nice area in the shop where it's a flatline computerized, robotic finishing system, a lot like what you see cars done if you've ever seen cars manufactured. And then at the end, before any dust or dirt or anything gets in there, it either hits heat or UV and it sets it up hard and cures it about 80% or so, depending on the finish, before it goes out and goes on the cabinet. So what I noticed was in the industry when people went to that, I would go pick up parts in my truck, for instance, or my SUV to go take to a job site. And there'd be times I'd be picking it up and the chemicals were so heavy in the car, I had to roll the windows down.
Open the windows. I used it.
Just
Yeah.
because I'm getting off-gassed.
Yeah. You and I remembered this action of rolling down the windows. Most people now push. Yeah.
Push. Yeah. I'm rolling down the windows, literally rolling. But, and it's funny though. And so, and you're like, wow, okay, now this is in my car. What's it doing in the entire house? Yeah. And I'm not chemical sensitive here. I'm just like, it smelled like somebody had a quart of lacquer thinner in the back of the car open. Mm-hmm. And I noticed with the UV Cure stuff, I didn't really have, I had a little bit of smell, but it was not anywhere near what it was. And it wasn't something that was watering my eyes so much that I was going to have to pull over because I was getting high in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. I had, several years ago, I was brought into a job because this, a custom home project where people in the house were getting sick and they couldn't figure out what it was. I ended up going out there and testing and finding that the cabinetry itself was the bulk of the off-gassing. And you think, well, cabinetry only takes up a very small area of a home. But imagine every morning you wake up and you go to the kitchen and grab a coffee cup and you open up those doors and you just flush in the face with all those chemicals that have just been stored inside that cabinet. And this can happen for years and decades even after installation. I tested cabinets and I found that the stained and clear finished cabinetry with high-end finishes being done by these, as you say, these custom cabinet makers that are basically, glorified garages, they're off-gassing at tremendous rates. Like we look for materials that off-gas 20 parts per billion of formaldehyde or less. These cabinets are off-gassing in the 14 to 1700 range. Then we looked at the painted version.
Some of these guys, though, if you think about it, they're using 1950s car lacquer technology.
Yeah.
Same finish they put on a 57 Chevy in the factory that you saw everybody out there hand buffing. They're using that on cabinets.
Yeah.
And they'll use that until the day it's discontinued.
Yeah, I got a story to tell you about that in a second. But then I tested the cabinetry that were painted. It's right now it's the big trend where it's painted cabinetry. Even though the manufacturer, the brand of the finishes might be the same between the clears and the paints, painted cabinetry off gases at rates that are less than half of what the stained and clear do. Yep. So I would tell clients, well, if you can't adjust the brand of the finish, then at least make sure it's a painted finish because it will off-gas less. And then I started working with, you may know, Crystal Cabinets up in Minnesota.
Worked with them a lot. I used to be a Crystal dealer, so I know them well.
Very good. They've just invested, I want to say, $40 million into a new finish facility there. And I mean, these people, they know what they're doing. And when you talk about custom cabinets, there's custom cabinets, then there's companies like Crystal and Birch and some of the others. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not just custom. It is precision. That's probably a better way to say it. It's precision cabinetry. And Crystal will use from a formaldehyde-free clear coat upon our request. Very few companies do that. It may not be completely toxin-free, but it's the absolute best you're going to find with such a high-quality cabinet system.
There's two things here. One of the things, and I want to go back to Crystal in a second, but the first thing I see with painted finishes is, especially here in the States, I'm seeing areas in the U.S. where cabinet manufacturers, not the big ones, but custom ones, send out the boxes and they assemble it, put it together, and then a painter comes in and shoots that lacquer now.
Yes.
It's the white tinted lacquer in the house, finishes the cabinets on site, and then for the next week, that thing is off-gassing into all the different raw materials that are not done in the house. Maybe the hardwood floors aren't finished, whatever. It is off-gassing, and it's never had any type of curing mechanism other than just fresh air go to it.
Right.
And that seems to be one of the biggest ones that I see. But and it's just a common practice out there. Now, Crystal, those guys, I did a project 15 years ago with them. I had a 12-foot long range hood that we built with them.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
What do
so
they have?
this
3
is
ranges underneath there?
no, they actually had a 84-inch French custom range and a
Mm,
pizza oven that was going there next to it.
wow, beautiful.
So, yeah, it's a car dealer's house, and that she was never going to cook in this thing, but that's just what it was. Her people were, but nonetheless, they could handle that. Where, if you walk into your home center and pick a brand there, they have a hard time making anything over 3 feet wide.
Right, right. Yeah, you are right. Their Crystal's special order shop is truly special. I mean, they will do, if you can think it up, they can build it.
You can draw it, they're going to do it.
Right.
So it's that simple.
So the stories about cabinets being finished in the field. I mean, what you described is not out of the ordinary these days.
No.
And I'll even take it one step further. Most of these situations are not even them buying good quality lacquers, which is, I mean, from a toxicity level, it's horrible, but at least it gives you better durability. I do a lot of work with builders in Texas, and it is common practice for builders in Texas to have the painter go down to the local Sherwin-Williams store and pick up one of their wall paints.
Yes.
And so then you wonder why in 6 months everything is sticky and gooey and starting to chip off. It's absolutely horrible.
It's not only Texas. There's a lot of places that do this. And my rule that I just did an episode on my show called the 10 things you should ask before you buy cabinetry. If your cabinet finisher can walk into a retail store and buy the finish, you've got the wrong finisher.
That is
Period.
a great point. For
Wrong
sure.
person.
Yeah.
Wrong
So
person.
I want to tell you this little story. Years ago, I worked with a local cabinet shop. They did all casework for like the Kohl's stores and Target stores, and I was involved in a project in Michigan for the Kresge Foundation, and all of the cubicles and offices for the entire foundation headquarters, they were finishing with our AFM Safe Coat Healthy Finishes.
Nice.
So I go to the millwork shop to talk to them about using our finishes, and they're looking at this stuff like, we don't know what we're going to do. Matter of fact, they started spraying some pieces just as a test, and they could not figure out how to spray water base. It was drying to the touch in less than 15 seconds.
Beautiful.
Well, for water base, you need a little more time for the surfactants to rise to poke out the air bubbles,
Flow
right?
out. Yeah,
Right.
just to flow out. Yeah.
So we ended up having to, and they're used to using solvent-based pre-cat lacquers, and so they always kept the humidity low. And so what I had to do is literally take a hose and spray down the concrete floor to raise the humidity. But I remember talking to the general manager of the place, and he had been there for, he said, 45 years. He said, I have been finishing myself for a good 20, 25 years. But he said, so I've never had any experience with water base. But he said, it's interesting, every once in a while I get this bad lingering cough. And as I cough, I'll be coughing up bits of cured plastic. And he looked at me as if this is normal. I just can't, I don't get that. I don't get, I understand being naive and just not knowing. But now that you know better, knowing what you're going through, why would you still allow the industry and all the young people getting involved in it to subject themselves to this mess?
I got the answer. And I see it every day on social media, on any one of the builder groups, remodeling, old house, whatever. I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I've never had a call back.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
There are some people out there, and there's a lot in the building industry, that I learned it this way as a kid, and I am not going to evolve, and I'm going to do it this way no matter what. And those are the people out there that are laying tile on drywall in the shower.
Oh.
They're throwing hot tar in the bottom to seal it up like they do in California.
Mm-hmm.
And all the different stuff that you see out there that, building science. I'm just going to throw vinyl siding up over tar paper and call it a day.
Right. I always tell people, I've been golfing for 35 years. I'm still horrible at it, and I'll admit it. Just because you do something doesn't make you an expert at it.
And by the way, the people that had you build it, that knew you built it wrong, aren't calling you back to build it wrong again. They're calling another professional to come fix it.
Yeah.
So that might be why you're not getting that call back.
Well, to that point, Eric, the average homeowner is in a house for what, 7 years, I think?
Yeah.
About 7 years. Building a new home, brand new, giant, one of these, wet rooms, not just a walk-in shower, but a wet room with a tub in there, maybe even a steam unit. And contractors are still doing the old-fashioned way, with waterproof membranes, liquid applied that get air bubbles and all that stuff. But what happens is, as water starts to migrate through, and it could turn into a mold situation, it usually takes somewhere between 7 and 15 years. So by the time it actually happens, the original builder owner is gone. The
Nobody
next
knows
person,
who it was.
yeah.
Yep.
And so this is why we have these issues. When contractors say, I've never had a problem, that's because you're not around when the problem happens. And the original owner's not there either.
I'm happy in the tile world they're starting to get that put together,
right,
with the tile professionals. They're trying to stay on top of the ANSI specs. You have the CTI certified tile installers, that are out there, and the materials are starting to get better and better. But you still have people out there. I commented on a post just last week where, concrete board that you put behind it, just your generic concrete board, is porous like a sponge.
Yeah, it's a wick.
Well, it's a wick. So I asked the guy, I see the concrete board, he's tiling right over. There's no tape in the seams, there's no nothing. It's just, there's 3/8-inch gaps in between things. And I'm like, hey man, looks like you skipped waterproofing day. And he goes, I put it on the backside. I put a vapor barrier up on the backside. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, man. So you're going to trap water between that and the mastic you're using there. So the mastic's going to fail after it takes up a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch of jam full of nasty water.
Mm-hmm.
You put it on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was crazy. This guy, actually, when I commented, that's not right. He sat over there and actually blew up my social media messenger feed going, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, dude, common sense.
It's common sense. Yeah. People wonder why their grout lines in their showers are constantly molding. It's because there's moisture that's constantly there.
Yeah.
Unreal.
And the more water trapping areas you put behind it, the worse it's going to get, because you're just trapping more mold, more moisture, and everything else. Now, I want to say, though, there is one thing, Andy, that I'm seeing out there that we still have to fix. It is such a huge thing, like in the Pacific Northwest where I'm at. So up here in our parts, and this could be in the South, it could be anywhere else, because we all have our seasons of rain. Mm-hmm. And some people like us, we have anywhere from October till maybe June is our rainy season. So we get most of our rain then. I can go by every house being built. As soon as that concrete's done in about September, October, I would not buy a house that was finished up in March, April, May. Because here's what happens. They get out there, they start framing. They're building, they're doing everything else. They get the whole thing roughed in, and that lumber has been out there for 3-4 weeks in the weather, soaked, nasty, and I haven't seen a single builder in my 30 years that has gone in there and done one single moisture test before they started building again. Not a single one. I was in a house that was $1 million house in Seattle, which would be this was 10 years ago. I was inside going to see if I could measure the kitchen yet. It was for a big builder doing that $1 million to $3 million house. Big set of stairs going up, balcony, all of that. I walk in, and because they still had the 2x4s around for the base plate, or 2x6s for the base plate, there was about 1.5 inches water on the subfloor. Mm. Now upstairs, they had this big balcony, and they had the stairs roughed in. They were still framing interior walls. There was OSB on the outside. There was so much water coming off the top balcony. It was a water feature. It was 1.5 inches by 4 feet of water pouring off of that and landing down on the floor. And on top of it, they had a guy out at the meter at the temporary pole out front yard, sitting there hitting the GFCI about every 60 seconds when the air compressor would short out because of the extension cords that were in the water, underwater. I walked in, stepped in the water, and went, I'm out of here. I'm not dying today.
Yeah, right.
But the problem is that house sold for $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
They got the roof probably put on it a few weeks later. Siding went up, electrical, insulation, off they go. Many of these homes that I see that have OSB or plywood on the outside, by the time that's getting done, it is black or charcoal. All the way up the building.
Unbelievable.
And that's in a brand stinking new house.
And it's all because of nobody wanted to take the time to take the unbillable time, essentially, to let it dry out or to employ some type of mechanism to dry it out. Whenever I'm involved in writing specs for a project for a healthy home, this is one of the first things I point out is that you are going to do moisture checks of the wood. After the home is dried in, you're going to start to do moisture checks. You're going to get the moisture level of the wood down below 14%, hopefully 12 to 13%, before any of the next steps get done. Otherwise, once it's closed in with insulation and drywall and a smart membrane and all that, it's going to turn into a problem. Either next week or in 10 years, it's going to be a problem. And the industry will say, oh, listen, this is, molds on everything. All wood has mold on it. It's going to dry out. Once you have your HVAC on, it's going to dry out. It doesn't matter if it dries out or not. The fact is that once you have mold, it's always there. It can be dormant, but it'll come back as soon as there's some other issue with moisture in the wall or a plumbing leak. So it's got to be dealt with at the start. So the best way to deal with it is to avoid it in the first place.
Oh, can I call out a major retailer here? I got one for you.
Yeah.
Let's go with the truth bomb right now.
Let's do it.
If I walk into my Lowe's store,
yeah,
they have now changed in my market to green, not kiln dried lumber. And now they're keeping it inside. Okay. Yeah, so it's not been kiln dried. There is no drying to this. It's just green stuck on the shelf.
Yep.
So what happens is you throw that inside a big building that's air conditioned. Their plan, I think, is so it doesn't dry out and twist and warp. I walked in and I put the pictures up on social media on my page here this last fall. It was like black, fuzzy lumber. There was black, there was gray, there was this white, almost foamy looking thing growing out of a stack of 2x4s. And it looked like spider webs going between them.
Unreal.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? I just went there last weekend to get a couple 2x6s because I'm building a project outside that I needed. I had to pick through them to not get the ones that were black.
Unbelievable.
So, I get it if we're still, an hour and a half away from the coast. So it's not like we're on the coast or something like that where you have an issue like that. The last thing I want to do is put molding lumber in my house. And some of these retailers and people will sit there and I want to be fair to them. They'll go, oh, well, that's just because it's Lowe's and the Home Depot. Well, no. Lowe's and Home Depot generally is buying the same lumber as everybody else.
Right.
The two problems they have is one, it's stored indoors in a climate controlled area. So that can cause its own problems because it's not cold outside. It's always just 72, 75 degrees in there.
Perfect climate for mold.
Perfect, right? It's perfect. The stuff in the lumberyard could be green, but it's 40 degrees outside. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Still wrapped in plastic. It's really not getting the things it needs for that.
Right.
And then, of course, you have people picking through the lumber pile, which is getting just more oxygen to everything else.
Yeah.
It's like you got your own petri dish there.
Well, so I work with a builder in Colorado, and one of the things he has pointed out is, because he's been in the lumber business for a while too, and he's like, you realize that this stuff is shipped on rail car from Canada to the U.S. It spends weeks on a rail car completely wrapped. And as well as I do, the Lumber Association will tell you, if you're going to store lumber, it should be covered from the elements, from sun and rain, but the ends should be open to allow for the moisture to transmit through. No, this stuff is completely wrapped. So it's essentially, it's incubating while it's being delivered.
Then it gets box and mold.
Exactly. Then it gets to Lowe's and they're like, well, let's just keep it covered because, whatever. And then they bring it inside and they open it up. And as you say, it just blooms. And so it is definitely a problem. And it's not just the big box stores. It's everywhere. And let's be honest, mold is natural, mold is everywhere. We can't get rid of that, but what we can do is eliminate the perfect environment for additional mold growth. And that's something that really needs to be addressed.
And I think there's products now too, like in my area. If these builders were using, Zip System or GP's new system or any one of these, membrane, impregnated plywood or OSBs or whatever they are, if they were using that at least on the roofing surface,
Right.
you'd be shedding so much water from the inside of that building. You're going to cut that down by 70% probably.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right, this brings me to a topic I really want to talk about with you, and you're the perfect person for this topic. The world's our oyster right now. We can do anything we want to do in the building code environment.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to have the undivided attention of code officials, what would you want to change right now? Maybe some easy pickings or to some really detailed things. What would you want to change in building codes to help us get to that healthier home situation?
All right, my first ones are easy. And this is ventilation. Those codes are so different state to state, city to city across the U.S. I would sit there and say, you need to have a large-sized CFM hood that vents completely to the outside over the range.
Mm-hmm.
And I would make sure that when I turn the range on, that somehow triggers the hood. And you could easily do it with our smart home stuff today. Easy. And when you turn the range on, that kicks on. And the higher you turn the range, the more burners you turn on, the more air it moves.
There you go.
I would also say just in about every bathroom, let's get rid of these 35 or 40 CFM vent fans that are rated at the fan at 35, not the 30 feet and the 4 elbows to go outside, to 100 and 120 CFM in that bathroom and make sure that it works correctly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
every bathroom should have it.
And tie it to the HVAC to bring in makeup air, right?
Correct. So when that turns on, kicks in, because if you got two people taking a shower and you got somebody cooking downstairs, cooking breakfast, you got a lot of CFM. And if somebody's got the laundry going,
oh yeah,
even crazier.
Ears would start to pop.
You got 1,000 CFM coming out of there and you got a vacuum going.
Right.
So that's an easy one. Beyond that, I would get into, again, building science and make that for each area. Because I know we have climates in these states. Generally, there's maybe 2 or 3 tops. Probably not 4 climate zones or 5 climate zones or something crazy there. But really, you've got a couple things in there. Let your state building codes use that building science for your area and make that code.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because so many times what happens is you've got this national code that, and by the way, building code is your D- in building.
Yes,
here's my other
exactly.
thing.
Bare minimum.
Oh, you passed. Woo!
Right.
You just barely made it. You're gonna take building 202 now because you got your D-. You passed.
Yep.
No, building code should be well exceeded if you're doing your job correctly.
Right.
But there again lies the problem. We are so much more worried about in our building codes out there about someone getting maybe shocked. But we're not worried about them getting cancer. We're not worried about them dealing with mold, chemical allergies, none of this.
Right.
And I think this one's going to make a lot of people mad. I would make them before on a brand new house, before people move in as part of that final checkoff, I'd make them do an air test to make sure there's nothing hazardous inside that house.
Bravo. Love that one. It's something I add into every spec we do, and it is always gets a lot of pushback. But ultimately, listen, there is no perfect home, but at least we kind of know what we're dealing with then. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I wholeheartedly agree. To your point about building science from state to state, zone to zone, people ask, well, what is the best way to build a house? Is it stick frame? Is it ICF? Is it this or that? it kind of depends on a lot of things. The fact of the
Yeah.
matter is some things don't change from house to house. What doesn't change is moisture mitigation, ventilation, and avoidance of hazardous air pollutants. That should
Yeah.
be for everybody's home. Now, there are many ways to get there, but if you don't have a baseline air quality test to tell us what's happening at this moment, then how do you make it better? What criteria do you use when a customer says, "I need to add more air purification"? Well, why? And how do you know it's working besides you just feel this or feel that? We've got to have numbers.
Yeah. There's no way to test it or to be able to see if it's working unless you have some baseline to base it off of.
Exactly right.
Now I have a funny ICF story for you. So my parents, while my dad was alive, he was a nuclear physicist. So he had like 4 different degrees, kind of CIA nuclear counterintelligence guy.
Wow.
So when we built their final house, I couldn't get away with a lot as a kid because he was on top of it. But when they built their final house in the Tri-Cities, Eastern Washington, so right close to the Hanford Nuclear Reservation there, one of the most polluted areas in the country, or in the world technically, but he went ICF. Oh, I just want to go fishing. I want to save this. Later on, after my dad passed away, I went, he didn't do that for energy efficiency. He was trying to control radiation entering the house. He built it out of concrete.
How about that? I mean,
I went, oh, that's what he was doing.
man, oh man,
Didn't think about it. He didn't say a word about it, but afterwards I'm like, wait a minute. He was never the energy efficiency guy.
Right?
I'm like, he built the dang thing out of concrete so he could control how much radiation was kicking through the walls.
The unintended consequence. He was building a home that's also energy efficient. It was a happy accident.
Exactly. So, I mean, I showed him it. He was like, oh, that's cool. That's great. He got over excited. I was like, why is he so excited about that?
That's wild. That is
Got it.
wild. Oh man, I would love to know, like, doing again air tests to see that house versus the neighbor's house. Like, is there
Right.
a measurable difference, in the air quality from a
Ooh.
radiation standpoint?
Oh.
Yeah.
I think my mom still lives there. We might be able to ask the neighbors. I would be very curious.
Yeah,
I'm very
just one
curious.
holiday. Don't mind me with the Geiger counter. Don't mind these noises.
And by the way, the side, and this is the funny part, this is what made me go, oh, the side that faces that direction
Mhm.
doesn't have a window on it.
Oh, how about that? You'll probably find out if you ever have to do any remodeling of that wall, you'll probably find out that he buried a layer of lead in there too.
Exactly. Who knows? Who knows? My dad was CIA. He could have done anything.
Sure.
People could have showed up in the middle of the night and something could have happened. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. That's
So,
great.
but
That's probably what
again,
what made you so interested in the the kind of the nuts and bolts of these things and really digging into it, is that that desire to learn the story behind the story, and that's why I always appreciate the information that you can provide.
Yeah, and there's something too that I want to mention, and it's something that I'm dealing with too, and I haven't talked about it much on my show. I like woodworking. I
Mhm.
like building stuff. I tell you what, you got to be careful, guys, out there if you're woodworking,
Mm.
because there are so many highly toxic woods
Yes.
that are common. So I've gotten to the point now. I mean, I've got vacuums for my saws. I'll wear a dust mask when I'm not on camera because you can't see me talk when I am. But I will get on around my shirt, down in here, around my neck, I will get what looks like a mixture between a sunburn and a rash from walnut
Wow.
because of its toxicity.
Sure. I remember years ago when the whole concept of watching formaldehyde in materials and reducing formaldehyde, and the story always is, well, any once living plant will still have formaldehyde emissions. It's at a very small level,
Sure.
but it still can be detectable. But the bigger issue is the terpenes and tannins and sugars and acids and all these things that are in wood that can be highly, highly dangerous. And I used to get a kick out of when the green building industry started taking off, and the term greenwashing was invented, when manufacturers would say, hey, our product is green because it's all natural. Well, asbestos is natural. Cyanide is natural.
Yep.
Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe. And wood is a perfect example of that. I have many clients who actually, a matter of fact, I have a client right now in Scottsdale. They just built a beautiful, beautiful home in Scottsdale. All the cabinetry in their house, stainless steel, because she cannot tolerate wood. The natural off-gassing of wood causes huge problems with her sensitivities. And the home, I mean, it's amazing to walk into this space where you do not smell wood at all. It's not irritating whatsoever.
No, it's interesting. Yeah. And it's just like, on the opposite side of that, I've tested out some air scrubbers and stuff in my house. Some of these things, especially during COVID, I was like, hey, I'm going to test this out. Some of them make me nervous. Like I've got one, I don't want to get into brands here because I don't want to disparage anyone that I don't know the full science on. So, but it makes me nervous because it's one of the kind of hydroxyl units, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
My wife can't bake in the house with active yeast because it kills it before it has a chance to rise.
Yeah.
And I'm going, not sure how healthy that is when that hits my lungs.
What is that doing to me? Right. And the hydroxyl thing is basically just it's a rephrase of the term ozone. And so, yeah, that's a topic. I'll tell you, all of these air purification systems that came out because of COVID, and it was really just an enormous money-making machine bringing out all these air purification systems. And I would say 98 out of 100 of the new ones don't really work as advertised, but they have awesome marketing. It's like this technology was used by NASA. Okay. That's like saying
that's the one I have.
That's like saying that the Tang you buy at the grocery store is exactly what astronauts were drinking.
Oh, you're going for my childhood now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no,
orange powder. Yes.
I'm sure that's what made all these astronauts survive their week-long time in space.
So here's where I use it. It's still installed in my system, but I can unplug it and plug it in.
That's good.
If I'm having 15, 20 people over in the holidays and I don't want to get sick, I'm like, awesome, plug it in. If my wife gets a cold, I'll plug it in.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, that's going to sanitize the house a little bit more with that. But that's kind of my thought process on it. And now my wife's got it. She's like, hey, we're doing pizza tonight, right? Yep. Okay. Are we unplugged out there?
There we go.
And that's one of those things.
Yeah. Well, that's a smart approach. It's, there's a time and a place for all these types of technologies. And I think the biggest problem we run into a lot of times is trying to adopt these technologies to everybody for every situation. And it's just not going to work. And I've probably told you this story many times, Eric. I can't tell you how often I've been asked to write a book on how to build a healthy home. The problem is I get through chapter 1, and then by the time I'm done with that, it's obsolete because something changed. Something new 100%. Was invented. The bigger issue I have is I can write a book on how to build a healthy home for you. After you have given me, if Eric Goranson calls me up saying, I'm building a new house, help me build this new healthy house, I'll ask all the right questions to get you your set of criteria. Now, the next person, completely different.
Different set of rules. And where's the house going to be? Are you in the desert?
Exactly right.
Are you in Florida? Are you in Minnesota? Are you in Seattle?
Yeah.
Wow, we have different construction methods all around.
Yeah, exactly right. And so this is why I love doing the show because I want to give people sort of that broad approach, some easy pickings on things that they can change or they can look into. But then when it comes to their own personal home, their own personal dwelling, I have to dig in to what they are individually. And I just don't think that business model can ever change for me. And so I like doing both of these.
Yeah, it's so much fun, and I love chatting with you on this stuff because, you know, I don't pretend to be a healthy home expert of any kind out there. I know a lot about it,
Hmm.
but yeah, I'll never catch up to where some of you guys have been doing only that for that long because I'm catching the new stuff when it comes out, and then
Yeah.
you learn, you go, oh, that's how that works. Okay, and plus there's some conflicting information that gets out there that people wave around that you're like,
Hmm.
that's wrong. But what are they trying to sell you?
Well, and that's why we got to have these open lines of communication between you and I and other
Mhm.
experts in the field, so we can talk about these things before we subject this to our customers without proper vetting. And so that's what I really try to do with this. So um, you're going to the big builder show.
You got it.
You're going to be spending a lot of time out there talking to a lot of people. What are you? Give me a couple of things. What are you looking forward to looking at?
I always like looking at technology out there to see what's going on. And I will stop by the HVAC booths to go, okay, what are these guys doing? And quite frankly, many times they're well behind where they should be, but they're starting to catch up.
Yeah.
It still blows my mind today that I can go buy a brand new mini split HVAC system out of a major manufacturer and it's still not telling me what the humidity is in the home. Come on.
Right.
I can go buy a $20 Amazon thermostat. It'll do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
But come on, people. And so I think, again, this is one of those things. I think we still have another 5 to 7 years before the American building community figures out they need to deal with humidity. We're
Yeah.
not there yet.
No.
But I really want to see how these different companies are working with that. On the other hand, I love looking at technology. The plumbing stuff doesn't get me as excited because there's only so many different faucets and
Right.
showers and things like that. As a designer, even I'm like, oh, okay, I've already probably seen it. I'll see
Sure.
some trends and I'll stick my head in that. But really going around and finding those new companies
Mm-hmm.
that are kind of hiding in maybe the side of somebody's booth that's a partner or something like that really excites me. So right now, like I said, you and I were talking, I get 100 emails a day almost, especially during the week about this time of year. And it's all these different companies. And most of the time, if it's sorry European appliance manufacturers or Southeast Asian ones, I'm not really interested. It doesn't help me at all. But when I start seeing people that are really diving into technology or new building products like exterior roofing materials, some of that stuff, that's where I start to get excited because I think we're going to get to the point now where we're going to see some new composites coming out for the exterior. They're going to be more fireproof, more windproof, more durable that you'll get 40 or 50 years out of. Um, and that's where I think that we're going that I think is going to really help. You're seeing a lot more rain screens and things like that coming on the market where the, you know, plywood slash sheathing manufacturers and all those weatherproofing guys are starting to get caught up. But there's some companies out there like DuPont that I feel they're still like 15 years behind. And I love those guys, but it just seems that they're not, they innovated to a level
Right.
and then just kind of treaded there.
Right.
And all these other companies are starting to come in going, hey, I got this, I got this, I got this. And we'll see how it plays out. But the other thing that I'm seeing too, and it's a concern of mine in the industry that I always look out for, but there's companies out there that are now recycling products and they're saying it's green, but some of the stuff I've been running into, whoo, I wouldn't use it.
Well, just because it's recycled doesn't mean it's safe, doesn't mean it's quality. I love the approach of doing something with it when it's past its original useful life, but it's got to make sense. And unfortunately, a lot of these recycled materials end up costing the consumer more, and then you get less from it. It just doesn't make good sense. So, my approach would be, let's not use those materials at the beginning that need to be recycled. Let's find better methods.
Well, great example. I'm in Portland, Oregon. We have this regional government, it's a kind of a pseudo government. They run everything from the buses to the zoo and the trash as far as the landfill stuff that they do. Well, Metro is what they're called, and they have a Metro paint recycling, which is awesome in concept. Everybody they can drop their gallons of paint off there for free or $5 or $10 for a load, and they mix it in and make new paint out of it.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if you go paint that, they're taking all these gallons of paint and they have like 12 colors. It's cool. Holy smokes, does that stuff smell like a chemical factory wreck.
Yep.
We used it over at our beach house to do some ceiling paint. Oh, it's ceiling paint. Whoo! I am not paint sensitive, but it smelled like an auto body shop.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine, as somebody like me I've been in the paint industry a long time and I know paint formulations, I can't imagine, because I've worked with these companies over the years, donating some of the products we had that wasn't sellable, but they can still use it. When you mix together 10, 15, 20, 30 different manufacturers, different formulations of product, and they try to group it by color and sheen, but still the formulations are different, understand that there are going to be some chemical reactions that are happening that you don't know what they're going to be until you put on the surface, because it starts to coalesce and the moisture comes out and then it starts to chemically cure. A lot of times, Eric, what happens is the byproduct is formaldehyde, because of what are called formaldehyde donors and precursors that are found in all these different paint brands. So again, the unintended consequence of trying to do the right thing. I love the fact that somebody is doing this and getting use out of this, but there's a time and a place to use it, and in your home is probably not the place.
And here's my concern. You've got every house flipper, low rent landlord going over there because they can buy a gallon of paint for $20.
Yep.
And the problem that I see too is some of these paints, I saw some of the cans, they were 10-year-old paint cans, half-filled latex 10-year-old paint cans.
So you don't know. They're spoiled, maybe not.
Maybe.
I mean, I know what spoiled paint smells like, and it's not pretty.
It smells like spoiled paint to me,
Yeah,
but that's just what it does.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So again, just be careful, people out there. The concept is beautiful. However, I'm not sure if the end result. And now I kind of want to team up with Caroline and paint some samples. Get some drywall, prime it, put it on there, test it.
Yep. That's
see
a
what
great
it's
idea.
doing, and then compare it to other national brands. Compare it to a Sherwin-Williams or Behr or whoever else out there, and just okay, let's give this a fair comparison between these brands and see what happens. Because I got a gut hunch, if I'm smelling it, that's well beyond what's going to show up on a test. If I was going to guess,
I hear that. Eric, my friend, you and I could talk for hours.
We've done it.
We've done it, and we didn't even broach the subject of whiskey.
No,
so that's.
We're gonna have to do that again.
I guess. That's right. That'll be another phone call. How about after you get back from the show?
There we go.
When you got time, you and I will sit down and talk again with a wee dram, and you can give me a kind of a synopsis of what you saw.
Awesome. And then I'll tell you what I was drinking down there too. I'll keep track.
Beautiful.
Because guess what? When I've got companies taking me out for dinner that I've worked with, I'm not buying the cheap stuff. Let's put it that way.
Nope. I hear that. All right, my friend. Very good talking with you once again.
Thank you so much, brother. I always have a great time doing this.
Awesome.